Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. We just got here. Back to New Jersey.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
You had a healthy winter?
Yes, I had a healthy winter. It was a crazy winter, but yes.
Okay. Okay.
Judy's sister didn't have a healthy winter.
And
All
she
right.
lives next door to me, so no, it was not a healthy
It was
winter.
not, okay, yeah, but
No,
it
it's
was
okay.
busy.
Happy to be back.
Thank Good. I'm gonna be right back.
Sure. Hi, Barry.
Hello.
Hi. So you're coming down this weekend? You're
Us?
on mute. Barry, you're on mute.
Oh, you're not.
No,
There we go.
still on.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I am.
yeah. All right. So you're coming down this weekend.
Yes, we are. Looking forward
Nice.
to it.
Looking forward.
Yeah. Where are you guys for Pesach? You're there?
White Plains. We're going to the,
Oh,
well,
nice.
Cholomoed will be back here with the little kids and then back to White Plains, first and last days.
Very nice.
That is Judy.
Hi, we're back.
All right, we're back.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. David Landesman. We got everyone going on. Erev Pesach, no less. Let me actually, since we just 8 o'clock, I'm going to have to shut down the Word document and then I can put it in the chat. So let's try this. If I only I knew where the chat was. Chat. There we go. Look at that. All right, give me 1 second. I'm not all that file. Your computer. All right, we'll be there 1 second. I'm a little slow. Oh, there we go.
We're not in any rush.
Yeah, I should be better at this point, but
When are you leaving for Israel?
Sunday, please God. File is in use, and I thought I shut it down.
Okay.
Shut down the wrong one. Okay. Hold on. Oh, I shut down Shabbos HaGadol. That wasn't good. Okay.
Okay. It's
All right.
coming.
There you go.
It's all good.
It was open on the computer. You got to shut it down on the computer before you can share it in a chat. So smart. Okay, but we got it. So now you have it in the chat. There is a Word document called Tosefes Shabbos and Yontif. So as opposed to some of the other classes that were a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is, out there, wild, insane. This is actually a much more traditional kind of a class. No crazy questions, no terrible philosophic quandaries about why we're killing our wives for having no money. This is a much more regular class on what I call Tosefes, Shabbos, and Yontif, which is making Shabbos and Yontif early. And one of the examples, just to make, even though the example is not in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, but to make it timely, right? We'll talk about trying to make an early Seder, right? The question comes up every year. It comes up in nursing homes and it comes up in houses that have little children, right? Especially once they knock on us, so it becomes extraordinarily late. Can you make, I mean, we all know the answer is no, but now we're trying to figure out why that
You'll learn
should be.
something new.
Now you're going to know why it's no, right? Now you're going to find out why in the world that answer is no. But before we get there, we'll take the general topic, and that is, how does this work? Meaning, Shabbos starts, let's say, at sundown, because that's when the next day, at least we're not sure, or Friday night Shabbos begins, Saturday night Shabbos is over. Who says you get to start Shabbos early? Let's start with that. I mean, is that a given? Does that make sense that we should be able to start Shabbos early? What do you think?
Well, somewhat early, just to avoid violating it.
No,
Starting it exactly on Sunday.
Yes. So Steve is saying you got to give yourself a 30-second leeway so you don't really mess up. But let's move past that. I want to do it an hour early. I want to start mincha at 7 o'clock in the summer, so we don't come home at 9:30 eating. That we do. The question is, let's forget what we do and ask yourself the question, is that actually an intuitive thing that we might think you should be able to do?
Make it louder.
And if you
No,
say,
'cause I just said that for
It's not,
someone
I don't
like
think it's so intuitive.
early, it's no, only could do that on Shabbos. So if I can't daven mincha ma'ariv early on
but
weekday.
you're talking about plug or you're talking about early,
Do,
Between plug and.
Yeah,
Seder,
okay, so
which
that-
is kind of
right.
What we,
which is what we do in the summer.
right.
Correct. So we will certainly get there, but I want the basic question. Is it something that makes sense that you should be able to do?
No,
I don't think it's so intuitive.
And I
No.
agree. Friday is Friday. Shabbos is Shabbos. Friday is Friday. It doesn't actually make a lot of sense that I should be able to make some of Friday Shabbos, or even some of, right? Well, we think you're being a big machmir, holding Rabbeinu Tamzman, right, and extending Shabbos 72 minutes later, right? Maybe I would say that doesn't make any sense. Right? Who gives you the right? And that's a slightly different issue. I agree. But maybe Shabbos has to be over when Shabbos is over. Maybe I can't extend Shabbos.
Maybe it's Baltosif.
Wow, maybe it's Baltosif. He's very anti-fro. I like that. Very good. All right, maybe it's Baltosif. Smack him in time. Except that we have our Gemara. So this comes again. Look on your source sheet. This is the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that we'll build off of. All right, the Gemara actually asked that question because
no,
it's
find
not
it on my phone.
intuitive at
Why
all.
isn't it? here?
I don't know, but let me find my phone.
Did you find it? Eddie, you looking for it in the chat?
I'm just getting
Eddie is as skilled as I am.
I'm just getting a blank. It says
Yep.
meeting chat. And then it
Barry,
just says
Did you see the source sheet in the chat?
recording is on. The account owner and everyone in the meeting can see and say messages, etc., etc.
Do do you see the document in the chat?
I don't think
No.
it's in the chat.
Maybe I still open up the chat a bit.
Yeah, you want to open up the chat window? Barry, do you see it?
Yeah,
You do see it. Could you
it's
open
there,
it?
yeah. No, actually, I don't. I got it. I see, but it's blank.
Yeah,
All right,
It
Yeah.
says meeting chat, but it's blank.
put to the right side.
Just a white thing.
chat.
Yeah, because that chat enables you to communicate either to everyone or to particular people.
Right, right. Is
Oh,
it a different chat?
Hold on. Now watch.
Oh, now I got it.
Why we keep Jeff around? It didn't. I mean, now you have it. Because
Now I do.
I told you I have no idea what I'm doing. I was not lying to you guys. That wasn't a joke. Okay, you should have it now. So let's look at the Gemara. This is now you actually really have it. The Gemara actually asked
No,
that
not
question,
reply,
right?
open it.
And you have the English you see is much larger and longer than the Hebrew, the Aramaic. This is Safaria's English. The bold is actually the words that are in the Gemara, and all of the rest of it is their commentary to help you make sense out of it. So the Gemara asked that question: Udemosifin michol al hakodesh minala. Right? How do you know? I need a source. It's not intuitive. There's no logic to it. But what source do we have that we can add? Right? Mosifin michol al hakodesh. You take from that which is whole, profane, regular weekday, right? And you make it. You sanctify it. How do you know? So the Gemara quotes a pasuk. The Tanya have a brisa, right? The charish v'katzir tishbot, right? The Torah says that by plowing and harvesting, you have to cease, right? Now, that could either refer to Shabbos or Shemitah. On Shabbos and Shemitah, you cannot harvest and you cannot plow, right? So the Gemara, so Rabbi Akiva says, "Eino tzarech lomar charish v'katzir shel shvi'id." I don't need a prohibition for plowing and harvesting on Shemitah. Shvi'is is Shemitah, the 7th year. Sharei kfar nemar sad chalot yizra. It already says you can't plow your field, right? You can't seed the field. Ella, rather, charish shel erev shvi'is hanechnas l'shvi'is, v'katzir shel shvi'is hayotze l'motzei shvi'is. Right. Rabbi Akiva says that we learn this extra words, right? The extra verbiage of v'charish uvekatzir tishbot, it's extra, and it teaches you if it doesn't apply to Shemitah itself, it applies to before Shemitah and after Shemitah. The same way we can take the Shemitah year, which should start on Rosh Hashanah and end right at the end of Elul, because that's the year. The same exact way we can extend it out a little bit before and a little bit after. So I can do the same thing for Shabbos. I can do the same thing for Yom Kippur. I have the ability, says the pasuk, or our learning from the pasuk, to extend out the beginning. I can add in the beginning, I can add at the end, and I can sanctify time that was otherwise not sanctified. And that is Rabbi Akiva's position. Rabbi Shmuel actually has which is actually, I think, the more famous. Rabbi Shmuel is actually the more well-known position, right? Rabbi Shmuel says that the charish of a katzir tishbot will teach you something else, right? Ma charish reshut av katzir reshut. That just like plowing is voluntary, so too what is prohibited is a harvesting that is voluntary. Yatzak tzir ha'omer shehu mitzvah, right? Harvesting the omer, right? When we cut the barley down for the korban ha'omer, which is the barley offering, that you can do on Shemitah, maybe even Shabbos, because that is for the purpose of a mitzvah. This here is talking about Shemitah. We're talking, right, during Shemitah, you can harvest barley for the Omer. That you're allowed to do, even though you can't generally harvest things. Now, according to Rabbi Shmuel, if he uses that pasuk for this Omer business, where does he learn that you can add, you can sanctify time? So nafkamele miditanya, you learn that from the following brisa, v'inisem es nafsho seichem b'tisha. Right, when it comes to Yom Kippur, it says you have to afflict yourself. Right, v'initem nafsho teichem on the 9th. It's not really the 9th. When's Yom Kippur?
10th.
10th. So why does the pasuk say the 9th? Right, Tamalomar ba'erev. So you might think the Gemara says Yachal b'tisha. Really, it's the 9th. Actually, the 9th. So no, it is the night of the 9th. But ba'erev, if it's at night, maybe it's when it really gets dark. No, but the pasuk says on the 9th. Right? How could it be the 9th, but also the 10th? How could it be night and still the 9th? So that it's the time in between. We get to pull a little down, right? From Yom Kippur, we learn that you can add Michal ala Kodesh, and you can actually sanctify time. Right? Now, that is the source. Now, what I want to do is I just want to give you 2 ways to understand what that actually means, how this works, and then we'll run through a couple of practical differences. One of them is going to be how early can you make your Seder on Pesach night, and then there are a few other fascinating examples. There are 2 classic ways to understand what we call, Tosef. I'm going to call it Tosefes Shabbos, but it could be Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, this additional time. Right? Option number 1 is that we literally make Friday Shabbos. Right? That's actually quite an astounding feat. Whatever hour we add, it's like we're literally taking Friday night Shabbos and just extending it back. It's the same amount of time. It's the same nature of time. We've just managed to literally, like Gumby, just pull it out and extend it. Shabbos used to be 25 hours. Shabbos is now 27 hours, 26 hours. It's this, like literally would just be able to, but the additional time is the same as Shabbos. There's no difference. Okay, that's one possibility. The other possibility is that it's actually a separate unit. There's Shabbos and there's Tosefes Shabbos. Right, the chiddush is here that you can act as if it's Shabbos. You can have the negative prohibitions. You can take them upon yourself, but that's all Tosefes Shabbos means. You don't actually have the ability to make Shabbos more than 25 hours. Now, right, which one of those makes more sense? That's a good question. Right, but those are the 2 ways. Either it's literally the same amount, same time as Shabbos, we're just extending it, or it is a separate block with separate parameters and separate laws. You have the ability to sort of observe Shabbos on Friday, but not make Friday into Shabbos. Right, so Rabbi Buchwald, everyone knows Rabbi Buchwald from National Jewish Outreach Program, turned Friday night into Shabbos. right? So he has to maybe qualify that according to one of these opinions. Maybe you can. Maybe you can't really turn Friday into Shabbos. Or maybe you can. But that's essentially the question, right? Are we turning Friday into Shabbos, some piece of it? At least from Plag HaMincha on. You can't do it before. Or, this is just an add-on piece that you're allowed to do. Just to flesh this out, and then we'll go through some of the examples. If you look at it might be an argument between Rashi and Tosfos. Look at the second page. I know the first page was very long, but that's all because of the English's fault. This is a Gemara in Moed Katan. So we'll get a little into the nitty-gritty here, and then we'll move quickly through some of the practical differences, some of the nafkaminas. I'm sorry, Mark, you have a source sheet. I didn't anticipate. We're a big crowd. Are you looking on? You have a little glasses. You share so nicely. It's unbelievable. You guys get the sharing prize. It's fabulous. Okay. This Gemara in Moed Katan says, again, it's the second page, the top source. You have the English for that as well. Right? The Gemara has a possibility. Yachal Yilke al Tosefes Rosh Hashanah. Right? Maybe, right, you would get lashes for violating Shemitah in the additional period. Right, why would we think that? Because we essentially said, right, this pasuk of the plowing and the harvesting, we're learning it from that pasuk. It is the same exact prohibited activities that happen during Shemitah, right? Same words, same activities, just like they're asur during Shemitah, they're asur when you expand it out, and just like you get lashes for plowing the land during Shemitah. Seems harsh, but that is true. Lashes are serious business, right? Just like you get lashes for plowing the land during Shemitah, you should get lashes. Possibly, you could get lashes for plowing in the additional time. And the Gemara says, no, Nasiv la Talmuda lif Torah. And the Gemara comes actually to, for whatever reason, which we won't get into later on, it says you don't actually get lashes. But now I ask the question, why would you think that you should get lashes? Right? Which of our explanations before does that work better for?
If you actually stretch.
It would have to be transformed.
Right. If it's transformed and it's the same time period, so then you would think that you can get lashes. If it's an additional time period,
Different
right,
rules.
it's different rules, different time period. Maybe you cannot. So this is actually an argument between Rashi and Tosfot. So the next source is the Tosfot. And then we have Rashi quoted in the Ritva. And Tosfot says as follows. Right? Yachal Yilka Tosefes Shel Rosh Hashanah. And Tosfot asks the question, Im Tomer, you're going to ask, Malchus Minala. Right? Where in the world do you think you should get lashes from? Well, right? Lo ksib Tosefet lav, ella asay greda. Right? Meaning the Tosefet of Becharish uvekatzir tishbot is a positive command. Right? So let's just take one step back. Positive command is, right, you must cease of this, as opposed to don't do X, Y, and Z. You get lashes for don't do X, Y, and Z. You don't get lashes for cease. Cease is a positive command. For violation of a mitzvah aseh, you do not get lashes. For violation of a losa aseh, you do get lashes. You don't put on your tefillin in the morning. You don't put a mezuzah on your house. You don't get lashes. Not very good. Every house should have a mezuzah, right? Every man should wear tefillin. But you don't get lashes for not doing it. You go out and have the pork chop, lashes. Because, right, mezuzah is a positive command. Put a mezuzah on your house. Not doing it, no lashes. Don't eat treif, negative. You're going to get whipped. Must have been good times. Although I would imagine you get whipped once, you don't eat that pork chop again. Because that's 39 serious beat. I mean, you
could die.
You could. They have to evaluate you, you know.
You could
You-
die from a pork chop.
I don't think you really died from a pork chop. I mean, not in this world. Okay, right. So Tosfos says, right, the extension is learned from a positive command, right? Add on, but there's nowhere there's a negative command. Why in the world would you think that there are lashes. So he says, right? You could say, from those two words, you learn that there is an additional. Right? But what does that mean that there's an additional? Right? Mishana shishit, right? It starts in the 6th year. V'chol din shvius yela shishis, meaning everything that applies to the 7th year applies to the 6th year, right? That sounds exactly right, like it's literally the same thing. Whatever happens in 7 happens in 6. It's the same time, and therefore you could even think about having lashes. Okay, that's the only way you could do it. If you look at the Ritva, the next source, so he quotes Rashi. If you look at, yes,
the original commandment, though, is positive, not negative for Shemitah. You shall rest.
no, but there's also a do not plow on this. There is also a negative commandment by Shemitah. Just like by Shabbos, there's a negative and a positive, right? By Shabbos, it says Tishbot, and it says Lo Taseh Kol Malacha. You say the long Kiddush? Well, you do. I know you do. And also the long Kiddush. No, you're a short Kiddush guy. I was a short Kiddush guy. I'm a short Kiddush guy. Right, but if you say the long Kiddush, it says Lo Taseh Kol Malacha, blah, 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 blah. Right, that's a negative
So
commandment.
if there's a positive and a negative, the negative.
Then you're just going to hell. Then you're just going right to hell. Whammy, you're just done. You're out. Yeah, yeah. The positive won't negate and take away the negative. It just adds on to it to make it, right? Things like that is a show of the Torah that this is really serious, right? So you get a negative and a positive. That's like really serious. If you look at Rashi, it's quoted in the Ritva, the next source. So Rashi says, if you look at just the end of that line, Im Tamar Hech Loken Ala say, right? Lekach Perush Rashi Zal. Rashi says, no, Yilka Makas Mardus to Rabbanan. No, we're not. We never meant that it was seriously. It was going to be real makas. That was right, rabbinic makas, which, by the way, were worse because there was no limit. Right, rabbinic lashes were worse than Torah lashes. But Rashi says we never thought in a million years that we were going to give Torah makas. Right now, one might suggest that Rashi and Tosfot are simply arguing about right how to understand this law. According to Tosfot, it clearly is an extension. It's the same time period. Therefore, I can at least think about having malchus. According to Rashi, you can't even begin the conversation because it's not the same time period, right? So that might well be the argument between Rashi and Tosfot. Okay, now let's go to Pesach night. So before we see the sources, right, let's try and apply this distinction to Pesach night. Right, one might be tempted to argue. Right, it's dependent upon this. Can you start the Seder early? So if we're really extending time and start, maybe you can, right? Maybe you can start the Seder early. If it's just an additional time slot, you clearly cannot. That might or might not be clear. So now let's go to the sources, okay? So the Mishnah in Arvei Psachim, right, says again that very one short line. Erev Psachim Samach Lemincha, right? Erev Pesach close to Mincha Lo Yochal Adam Ad Shetechshach. Right, a person cannot eat until it gets dark, which means you can't start your Seder until it gets dark. And Tosfos wants
But
to
there's a
know,
lot of Seder before the eating.
except it starts with
Because
Kiddush. Right, and then there's a whole business of right. So Eva's already in the nitty gritty. She's in the details. Right? Can you separate Kiddush? Does Kiddush have to be said over? That's a very good question. What?
Gets your 5th cup.
if you say it twice, yeah, there you go.
Yes, we like our 5th cup. Again, Bnei Akiva Haggadah loves the 5th cup because it's for Haveti. It brings us back to the land of Israel. I think that's a issue for another time. Okay, all right, let's not get sidetracked. But that's right. Eve asked a very good question, which is eating the meal, is eating the matzah, is that the 4 cups? Is the 4 cups have to be said over the matzah? Therefore, it's tied to the time of the matzah. That's a little beyond the scope of beyond the scope, but it's a very good question. Tosfos asks, right, a very simple question. Right? Why does that have to say until it gets dark? That should be simple. You can't eat at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. You got to have your meal on Shabbos. So that's number one. Why even bother to say it? And he says that it doesn't say, right? The Gemara already asks, right? What about Shabbos and Yontif? It doesn't say, the Gemara talks about not eating before Shabbos and Yontif, so you have an appetite, but it never says you can't eat on Shabbos and Yontif until it gets dark. Right? So why the focus on until it gets dark? So he quotes Omar Arimi Corbil, right? Someone in France. If I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sure I am. Degabe matzah dafka ba'inan ad shetechshach. Right? Matzah is different than everything else, right? Because look at the next line, right? The Torah says v'chluat habasar balayla hazeh. Right? You have to eat the korban pesach at night, on this night, and matzah and maror, right? Eat kishula pesach. They are compared to pesach because they have to be eaten all together. But by Shabbos and Yontif, we don't have any requirement of night. Okay, there is a there's a Tosfos Rabbeinu Yehuda Chassid and Brachos which I saw quoted but could not source. So you have to believe me that he says this. Take my word for it. But I could not find it. It's not in the Bar Ilan, and it wasn't on Hebrew books, and it wasn't on the Otzar HaSfarim. So I'm sure it's in somebody's library, where he quotes the first answer of Tosos, and then he says, no, there's another difference, right? You might think, let's take a step back. When was the Korban Pesach shechted? When was the Korban Pesach shechted? In the afternoon,
Erev Pesach.
right? Erev Pesach in the afternoon. When is it eaten?
At night.
At night. Now, that is really the only korban in the whole world that you get to eat, but you have to wait to eat. Every other korban, you get a day and a night, you get 2 days in the night, but the moment you shecht it, you get to eat it. So this Tosfos Rabbeinu Yehuda Chassid said, no, it says until it gets dark, because you might think that the korban Pesach is just like every other korban. Shecht it during the day, and you can start eating it during the day, and you can eat it through the night. It would be logical. To avoid such a misimpression, it says until it gets dark. But if that is what Mishatech means, just that you can't eat the Korban Pesach, and not that you can't start your Seder before it gets dark, guess what? We might have just found the Rishon who says, don't get too excited just yet, that you can start your Seder before it gets dark. Now, one is tempted to say that this would fall right in line with our argument. If you believe you can extend Pesach, that would be Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. You could extend it. It's now really Pesach, right? Whereas according to Tosfos, you can't really extend Pesach. Now, the problem is then you have to distinguish between Pesach, Shabbos, and Yontif. And there's another possibility, which is even if I can make Friday night into Shabbos, and I can make Erev Pesach into Pesach, maybe I can't make it into what? Right? Maybe I can't make it into Laila. When it says V'ichlu et habasar b'Laila hazeh, it could be that Pesach is unique. You could make it holy. You could make it just like Pesach, but you can't make it night. Now, maybe I just made up that distinction. It's possible. I might have just made that up, but I think that makes a lot of sense, right? That meaning there are certain things that you just can't do. I can sanctify time. I can make it just like Pesach, but I can't take day and make it into night. Or I'm fundamentally wrong, and if you can make Friday, Erev Pesach and the Pesach, you can make day into night, and you might be able to start your Seder early. There are a handful of poskim somewhere, right, who make these exceptions for people who are very old, but general consensus is that we do not. That's not something that we do, and we are stuck making our Seders late. Let me just give you a few other fascinating differences that might. Right. Can you make a wedding on Yontif?
No,
No, why not?
because it involves a contract, right? It involves a suit.
Contract. So let's say I'll do the contract right before, and then I'll have my wedding meal
Never get
on
back
Yontif.
to the screen to see what report he's done with this.
Right. So, right, Steve says
Yeah, he did.
simcha, right? You can't combine simchas. So the question then becomes, and this is actually a very important question in old, it doesn't really apply today because when's the last time you were at a Friday afternoon wedding?
My
Israel.
parents-
In
my
Israel,
parents-
they do it.
You
Friday
go.
morning weddings. all
All
the
right,
time.
Howie is a myth buster. It really happens. Really? Imagine 2 out of 7 people here have been to a Friday afternoon wedding. Okay,
Mhm.
right, in Israel, everything in Israel. But they used to do it because then, well, you didn't have to make 2 meals.
Right.
Your
My
Friday
parents
night-
got married. My parents got married Friday afternoon.
Look at that. Wow. What were the chances? Okay. Right, no, but could you actually have the wedding,
Yeah.
right? The meal you could probably push off and that was okay. Could you have the wedding during Tosefes Yantiv
Here.
or Tosefes Shabbos? And that would very much depend on our question, right? If it really is Yantiv, then Eim Arvin, Steve has Eim Arvin Simcha v'Simcha. If it's a separate extension, you might be able to. That plays into a lot of these Friday afternoon wedding discussions. The other one, which is fascinating, which gets a lot of play in the Achronim, if it's Shvi'i Shal Pesach, right? It's the 7th day of Pesach, and you want to make Shmini Atzeres early. Can you say Leishev Basukkah? Right, that's a fascinating question.
Right.
Sorry, what did I say?
Okay.
Oh, Pesach. It is the season. That's
Right.
that's not my fault. Okay, right, but it's 7th day of Sukkot, and you want to make Shmini Atzeres early because it's really late, and you're going to take it in early. And now, can you say it's, let's say, an hour before Yantif, so you accept Yantif early, and you go into the Sukkah, should you say Leishev Basukkah or not? And the answer is it depends, right? On exactly.
Yeah,
It-
so,
Right.
It depends, right? If you can make Shvi'i Shal Pesach into Shmini Atzeres, if you can turn Hoshana Rabbah into Shmini Atzeres, then you can no longer say it. If you
Right.
cannot, then you would. That's an argument between the Taz and the Maharshal and the commentary to the Shulchan Aruch. They can't they're arguing about exactly this
but
point.
you're extending then, so.
It's
okay.
Hoshana Rabbah.
Sorry, go back to
Right.
Pesach. Right. What about, so the second day, the second Seder? So is it different because you're extending Yontif into Yontif?
Well, you're not, because we're doing 2 Seders, because one day is Yantiv and one day is not. But that was a valiant effort. Good points for trying. No, meaning it's not really 2 days. I mean, it is 2 days of Yantiv, right? But it's really one day that was and one day that wasn't. So you can't steal from one to the other if you're keeping
So
all
you,
that.
so then, under neither scenario, could you
Start
have the
the Seder.
second Seder early,
That is correct.
under no scenario?
That is correct. Sorry.
So then, following that logic.
Steve is leaving now.
sorry,
He's outta here.
But that logic for Hoshana Rabbah would be the same thing, you can't, because you can't.
Well,
extend-
no, well, that's the question. Well,
But using that logic, you wouldn't be able to, because you can't extend Yontif into a Yontif.
no, I mean, you can't start Pesach early because it's not yet, because it has to be done at night. There is no mitzvah to do Shmini Atzeres at night. So that would be the difference.
But
Right.
we already ate the carbon Pesach the night before, so it's.
I get to eat
Makes
it
a
again.
difference.
Although if you're doing 2 days,
Days,
you're not eating the Korban Pesach, right? So I don't have to do 2 days, you don't get the lamb. It's like a lose-lose proposition. But that question meaning of the Hoshana Rabbah going into Shmini Atzeres, can you say Leisha Basukkah, is exactly the question of the nature of that time. Now, practically, we obviously do believe that. Well, let's give
100%.
give one last example. What can you do Kiddush during Tosefes Shabbos? Should depend on this question, but we do it all the time.
Right.
So here, either that's conclusive proof that you can turn Friday night into Shabbos. Because we do it all the time. You go home, you make Kiddush before, we will make Kiddush often in the summer before it's dark. Or we rely on a fabulous Rambam, which is our last source. So look at the last source.
I'll read it.
Okay. Yesh lo la'adam lekadesh alakos erev Shabbos bi be'od yom. The Rambam says you should make Kiddush erev Shabbos while it's still day.
Sure
Uh,
can.
Yesh lo ladav, you can. May recite. Right? Afal pi shelo nichnas Shabbos, thank you. Even though Shabbos hasn't entered. V'chein madel hakos mi ba'od yom. You could also do Havdalah, even though it's still Shabbos. That's a little bit weird, but okay. That's a little bit strange, but let's leave that for a moment. All right. Shemitzvos zechira la'amra ben b'shas knisasa v'yitziasa ben kodam l'sha'azu b'ma'at. The Rambam almost says that Kiddush is not the beginning of Shabbos, Havdalah the end of Shabbos. You just got to get it close. You got to remember the beginning, got to remember it ends. Just got to get close, but it doesn't. I know it's a little bit strange, but the Rambam does write that.
No one makes Havdalah, so everyone makes Shabbos early.
Well, you
But
can't make
no
all
one-
of Havdalah early. You can't light the fire. Yes, that's very difficult. Right? You cannot light the fire early.
because,
But the truth is, you could make Havdalah in Ma'ariv after Plag. We actually did that during COVID. In the beginning of COVID, when we didn't want to have a long stay in shul, we would daven Ma'ariv early on Motzei Shabbos. We would say Havdalah in Shmona Esrei. It was still Shabbos. Then we would go home and wait, and Shabbos was over. We'd make Havdalah. Right, so it could be we rely on the Rambam that close enough. The point is just to remember Shabbos at the beginning and the end, but not that they demarcate the time, or they even have to be on Shabbos itself. My guess is that that's probably not what we rely on, because I don't know anyone who makes Kiddush before it's actually Shabbos. Right, which means our common practice pretty much does believe that you can really extend the day and sanctify it. It becomes really part of Shabbos. But on Pesach night, we're stuck because you cannot achieve Halayla Hazeh. That I wish. Unless anyone has any questions, which I'm happy to take.
What about the famous question? I mean, I'm not sure even of the famous question of if it's during Sfiras Omer and you're Makabel Shabbos early and then you forgot the Omer for Friday.
So that would, in theory, be related as well, right? Right, Barry's one should, in theory, say that is exactly dependent upon our, right? Let's say it's 7 o'clock Friday afternoon. You made Shabbos at 6:45, and then you said to yourself, "Oh shoot, I forgot to count Friday's Omer." Now it's already Shabbos; it's already the next day, but it's still daytime. So in theory, you would say yes. If you can really make it Shabbos, maybe you lost.
Right.
If it's not Shabbos, then you would win. But as long as there's a doubt, you could continue counting with the bracha for a totally separate sphere reason. All right, wish everyone a Chag Hashem V'Sameach. Next Tuesday night, we should not be having a class because we cannot get in Zoom. We should be doing other Torah learning next Tuesday night, and we'll pick up after Yontif with more classes. Yes.
Okay. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach to all.